Hello, I'm Jim Timmelty, and welcome to Beacon Hill Update, a periodic program where I talk about issues that face the community and the Commonwealth that are relevant. Today I'm joined by a noted conservationist and environmentalist, friend of mine from Sharon, Paul Lowenstein. Paul, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jim. Nice to be here.
Wanted to talk a little bit about the most important topic I think that's facing our environment and our future, which is water and its conservation. It's something that you've been involved in and had many successes over the last few decades. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about how you got into that very important act and what you see is going on in the future.
Well, I started out in 2002 when I sold my business. I was kind of looking around for something to do, and I decided to join our local water committee in Sharon. And the first thing that occurred to me was, well, we should be conserving this vital resource. That town depends on 6 municipal wells. Our water resources in Sharon are finite and vital. So therefore, the obvious thing to do is to try to conserve it. So we began by putting water bill inserts in all of the water bills. What better time to communicate with people than when they're opening up their water bill and seeing how much it costs? You put a flyer in there saying, here's how you can conserve the water. And from there we implemented steeply ascending block water rates so that we provided the community with each homeowner with an incentive to conserve. The top block water rate is much higher than the basic rate for essential domestic water use. So if you want to use water for non-essential purposes, such as lawn irrigation, or if you just neglect to fix a leak, you're going to pay for that. Right. And that provides everyone with an incentive to conserve, and the results have been phenomenal. We've reduced our water use town-wide by approximately 20% over the last decade, and that translates to 100 million gallons a year of water that we're not using that we would have used otherwise.
It's a change in behavior, because I think those of us who are students of politics and maybe of history remember in a national sense how Governor Dukakis, when he was running for president, was embarrassed by then Vice President George Bush, who suggested that he's worried about the environment. He's a noted environmentalist. However, the Boston Harbor is the most polluted harbor in the world, and I think that really stunned I think the Commonwealth and some people here that we were the lowest, certainly in the nation, and we've done many things to address those problems. And I remember working as in a state agency that was the steward. I worked for the Metropolitan District Commission, and we were the stewards of the beaches, and we had an initiative under Governor Weld to bring people back to the beaches because they had been largely cleaned up. And I think it was the beginning of an evolution where in the 80s we were using, and I know you have the figures, how many millions of gallons of water we were using versus what we're using now is a dramatic difference and a tremendous savings to the Commonwealth.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Boston's water supply, because just as Sharon has succeeded in reducing its water use, the water use in the greater Boston area, the water provided by what's now the MWRA, which is the successor to MDC, or the Metropolitan District Commission. The MWRA, the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, has succeeded in reducing the water use, or I should say the people of the greater Boston area have succeeded in reducing their water use by about 40%, which has lowered the water use from 330 million gallons per day in the 1980s wow. down to about 200 million gallons per day today. I mean, that is just a stunning achievement for a major metropolitan area. And it matters because the sustainable yield, or the safe yield, of the reservoir system is only about 300 million gallons a day. So back in the 80s, when they were doing 330, they were actually running down the reservoirs. Right. And they knew that something had to happen, something had to change. The first idea was, let's go get more water. They talked about running a $500 million pipeline out to the Connecticut River Valley to pump water east to supplement the reservoirs, to cover that extra 30 million gallons a wow. day. And the people in Western Massachusetts, you know, they said, no way, can't have our water. And they fought against it at Beacon Hill. They went and they made demonstrations and they screamed. And MWRA said, well, maybe we should rethink this. And they started promoting water conservation. They started fixing leaks. They replaced a lot of toilets. Massachusetts was the first state in America to require low-flow toilets in 1987, which was a direct result of this situation with MWRA. The bottom line is, as I said before, MWRA water use in the MWRA service area has dropped by an astonishing, 40%. I mean, nobody thought that was possible. Consultants back in the 1980s thought they might maybe get it down to 260 million gallons a day, best case, if everything went well.
Right.
And they got it down under 200. I mean, that's a huge difference. And it was just beyond the wildest imaginings of professional consultants.
Yeah. It's the right thing to do, and it's a savings because you save money. And you take a look at what other states are doing and the battles that other states are having around the country about economic viability, about taking water from various states to irrigate the farms in California. Lake Mead, which feeds Las Vegas, which I can't imagine what their usage is, and probably some of it just for entertainment. I think that people are missing the point that you can get to a critical battle, and you can't reinvent it. You can't stop. I mean, these mistakes that are happening. Water is going to be the most important commodity to this century. I think it is as important as oil was to the last century. I think water will be the same, and to not be good stewards and not have this, I mean, it's life-sustaining.
That's correct. Air and water. I mean, these are vital, vital to life. And if we really want to have our children and grandchildren enjoy a sustainable future, we got to learn how to live sustainably, and that can start with water. In fact, a lot of the lessons we've learned from conserving water are directly applicable to the energy problem. We have the Paris talks now about climate change. I mean, even in Sharon, where we've reduced our water use by 20%, that reduction has also reduced our well pumping. And our wells are run by electric motors. The electricity we use to pump the water in Sharon is the single biggest municipal cost of electricity. If you break down the electric use of all the municipal, the schools, the DPW, all the different departments, and you break it down into compartments and line items, and you'll see that the electricity we use for pumping the wells is at the top of the list. And we've reduced our energy use by about $30,000 a year just from the electricity to run the pumps.
Yeah.
And that's keeping about 100 tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere every year. Well, that's not going to solve climate change by itself. But that's the kind of thing we've got to do if we're going to be successful in addressing climate change. And we found that, the same methods that we're using with water conservation, I mentioned before the steeply ascending block water rates, that sends a message to people. It communicates to people that, okay, use what you need, and it's reasonable, it's inexpensive. But if you're going to go and slather it on your lawn or use it for non-essential purposes or fail to fix a leaky toilet for months or years, that's going to hit you in the pocketbook. And people get the message. We're a capitalist society. People respond to economic signals like that, and we need to think about the same kind of economic signals with carbon as with water. As I said before, there are lessons to be learned from the water conservation successes that we've had that are directly applicable to the climate problem.
And I love what Sharon has done in involving and making the children of the schools kind of invest in this project, in work on peer-to-peer. Some talks about doing some water conservation, because I think what we've seen with tobacco use and maybe, and particularly with seatbelt use, you can't get in a car with a child now who doesn't remind you to put on your seatbelt. And there were a group of students who came in to the State House from Sharon Schools, and they had these interactive displays and some messages that they displayed in Doric Hall so that everybody who worked in the State House could get a look, and just kind of a gentle reminder to everybody, we're all in this together, and if each one of us does our part and we get smart and we fix leaks and we never let the water run, that annoying Barney show that was on when my kids were younger, but it gets in their head, it inculcates them a little bit in that, yeah, you have a role. And if you do this, it's going to be a win-win. You're going to save some money and you're going to do the right thing for those, that generational transfer, that you'll leave a better place than you inherited. And I think that's something that we need to broaden the outreach to many other schools, because I think it's something that would be of interest to everyone in the community.
Yes, that's so true. The next generation. I mean, that's why I do what I do, is for the children and the grandchildren. I mentioned before that the water bill inserts, and I mentioned the steeply ascending block water rates as an economic signal, and I'm messaging that way. But also part of our award-winning conservation program, water conservation program in Sharon, has been this education piece that you mentioned. We have Nancy Filer is our water conservation coordinator in Sharon. She works through the Neponset River Watershed Association, and she goes into the schools and teaches them about water conservation. And she's the one who organized this effort with the graphics instructor, and she provided the conservation information education for the kids. It was a combination of the graphic idea and the conservation ideas, and put them together and make these beautiful posters that they came up with. So the best way to reach the adults in our town is through their children, just like you point out. And that has helped amplify the message that we're sending through the water rates by talking to the kids and getting them to go back home and apply these things. I actually, based on the success with Sharon's water conservation program, I was fortunate. I collaborated with a friend of mine who lives in Georgetown, Massachusetts, and we succeeded in getting a grant from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection to go into Georgetown and apply the same techniques that had worked so well in Sharon in the town of Georgetown. We did this over a 3-year period from 2010 to 2012. And we went into the schools, we worked with the kids, and we changed the water rate structure, and we put water bill inserts in all the water bills, and we were really successful there too. We brought the water use down to approximately 20% in Georgetown as well. So the same methods that worked in Sharon worked in Georgetown too.
And as I mentioned, with the kind of the national problems where some states were battling other states over water rights and water usage, and these are significant. They have it's significant. The outcome that can happen with some conservation. Lake Miramichi, which is right on the Foxborough-Plainville line, which you can see from Route 1, actually the people who live on the lake weren't able to use the lake this summer, very dry summer, so their boats were literally stranded at their docks. And there was some concern amongst the neighbors that another neighboring community, which was Attleboro, was using water, didn't have a mandatory ban, or didn't even have an odd even ban on this summer, and that was drying up their lake. So it can put different communities at odds with each other. And I know also in Rehoboth there is a shad reservoir where that water from that area goes to the Bristol Water District in Rhode Island, and they didn't have meters on that. So it can be, it can cause some consternation. It can have real impacts on people who bought a home and bought a boat, wanted to use it, and then based on another community doing, using that resource, maybe there was some that would say they weren't great stewards, that maybe something should be done. And I'm not sure if that's a DEP would be the enforcing action on that, but the end result of that meeting was that I think that Attleboro changed what it was doing.
Well, you mentioned water meters. You know, if you want to lose weight, you got to have a scale. You get on it every day and see how much you weigh. That's how you lose weight. If you don't have the scale, you probably won't lose weight. Same way with water. If you want to reduce or use water more efficiently, you need feedback on how much water you're using. And that's why water meters are absolutely essential. Fortunately, in Massachusetts, in the Northeast, we predominantly got most, if maybe not all communities, but I would say virtually all communities are metered. But there's another layer on top of that now. We're coming out with more sophisticated metering systems with radios built on them so that the radio sends a message to the water department on an hourly basis by radio, and all the data is right up to date. So if somebody calls up and says, oh gee, you know, my water bill suddenly tripled, the person in the water department can automatically access their water usage records and says, well, something strange happened back there 3 weeks ago. What was that? Oh, I must have filled my swimming pool that day. Yeah, now that you mention it, so the conflict is resolved right there because they have the information. Another thing that they do with that is the software has a flagging system. So if somebody's water use suddenly changes, you know, it goes from a low level to a high level. Mind you, this thing is recording every hour. So it really, if something happens really out of the ordinary and it persists for, say, 3 days, a message comes to the water department and says, this person's water use has suddenly changed. You might want to send them a postcard and notify them. So the water department every month sends out a few dozen postcards to people whose water use has changed. It probably is what happened is a crack developed in the flapper of a toilet, and suddenly it started leaking 24/7, and oh, the person gets the message. It's good customer service because the person isn't going to wind up with a monster water bill because it went 6 months without being fixed, unbeknownst to the homeowner. He's getting a message from the water department. Promotes good relations between the water department and the community because now the water department is helping people conserve water and save money on their water bill. So it's such a win, and this is an example of using technology to manage this vital and finite resource.
And you wouldn't be able to otherwise know that you had an underground leak unless there was something like that. If you couldn't identify where the pipe was and it had breached, you'd be paying for that water, or somebody would be paying for that water. It wouldn't be going to the right use. So that's next gen water delivery system.
Let me give you an example. There was a homeowner in Sharon who has suddenly got a big water bill. And he called up the water department and says, I never use this much water. There must be a mistake. Your meter must be broken or something's wrong here. You must have slipped a digit because I never use this one. There's a $500 water bill. And he said, that can't be. And the people in the water department said, well, you probably have a leaky toilet because that's the most common place for a leak to happen. The guy says, nope, can't have a leaky toilet. I'd hear it. It'd be hissing. I'd hear it.
Right.
I'd hear nothing. So the water department guy says, well, let me come out to your home. They're really good about that, you know. Let me come out to your home and work with you, and let's see if we can find out where this leak is. The water department guy goes to the home, makes a beeline for the toilet, takes off the cover on the tank, and looks in there. And sure enough, the water level is just a little higher than that standpipe in there, and the water is creeping over the standpipe 24/7. Yeah. The water department guy, you know how there's a float ball in there on a metal arm? Yeah. He just bent it about 1/4 of an inch. And that made the water level 1/4 of an inch lower. And he says, that'll fix your problem.
Yeah.
$500, please.
Well, somebody has to pay for that.
Oh, he has to pay for it. Sure, he used the water. Yeah. He didn't believe it until somebody went out and showed him. But that's the kind of thing that can happen. Little things like that you might not pay attention to are very wasteful, and you need to, you know, find these things. And now with the sophisticated software that we have with the electronic radio meters, we can catch those situations before they turn into $500.
Well, I could talk water all day with you, Paul, and I know we could go into other topics that we've worked on because you have a wide interest in many things that are going on, not just environmentally, but socially. And you and I have enjoyed our conversations, and Sharon, and I really appreciate you joining me today. So thank you very much for joining. I hope you enjoyed the program, and stay tuned. We'll see you again at Beacon Hill Update. Thanks very much.